Add to stream. Add to stream. What's up? Can you hear me?
You there?
Yeah, you can hear me? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
All right, that's cool. What's up, man?
Same old, brother. What's going on?
Hey, I'm chilling like a villain. I fucked up last week. Everybody, so listen, a few days ago, it was completely my fault. All right. It was through my own foolishness and and inattention to detail. So I want to thank everybody for tapping in and all that other good stuff. I like that banner behind you, man.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, my cat's moving my camera around, so I'll have to excuse the technical difficulties.
Yo, where did you get that FPC banner from?
They sent it to me, actually. I asked them for one, and we've got a ton of banners up in the shop, all kinds of stuff. We've had a couple people send us some banners with some choice words about Biden and Whitmer. So we'll put up anything you send us, guys, within reason, of course.
So let's get to it. For everybody that doesn't know, this is Justin, owner of Fenix Ammo. Fenix, full disclosure, Fenix Ammo is a sponsor of Black Guns Matter. I'm talking about a guy in a group of guys that when the government overreach in the form of so-called COVID safety happened across the country, and to be perfectly honest, across the globe. There's a small handful of organizations and businesses that kept going, that said we are allowed as adults to make a decision for ourselves, and if you choose to step back, you can. But we want to keep churning out ammo, continue to go train, be healthy, stay out in the sun, not wear a mask. And Fenix is one of those organizations. So a lot of times when people say, well, what linked you with Fenix? We at Black Guns Matter, and myself individually, I'll speak more for myself. We like to link up with companies and people that are rebels. And we'll talk about a little bit of that tonight. But I just wanted to kind of give everybody a backdrop for the people that may have not known. And I want you to do the same, just like let everybody know about the company. I specifically want to know about obviously some of the people in this will know about the did you vote for Joe Biden scenario, and what's the status from there? What's the status going on in Michigan? Tell us about the company. Tell us how people can support, and then we'll get into some more of the ammo related questions that I know a lot of people want to hear about. So tell us about yourself and Fenix Ammo.
Sure. So my name's Justin Nazaroff. I'm the general manager, CEO of Fenix Ammunition. We got started in 2016 in October, shortly before the election. My brother, myself, and my father started the company. My brother was in the ammunition reloading industry for about a year prior to that, and it was an interesting opportunity that we jumped on. So we kind of started off actually when things were pretty rough after the election. Of course, there was a big downturn in the ammunition market. So like every other company that's struggling to find their place, we ended up finding a couple of different niches that we filled. So competition shooting being our primary market that we really went hard after, USPSA, 3-gun, IDPA, all those things. And then that led us into working with more training companies. In particular, here in Michigan, we work with MDFI, Michigan Defensive Firearms Institute, and a number of others. I do quite a bit of training myself, companies like Cogworks, Haley Strategic, all those guys. Not all of them are our customers, but that's our market, are the people who take good quality training, who understand that you are the weapon, and you have to be trained in the proper manner. And so then moving forward, and as things kind of got more saucy politically, we started making a connection with more liberty-minded folks. Myself being a small L libertarian, and my brother and my father being much of the same. We started interfacing more with that market. I would say we started paying much more attention politically here in Michigan as people like Haley Stevens got elected, and we could see that they had a very, very anti-gun position. They were all very well networked with the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation, Moms Demand Action, all these people, big money donors on the anti-gun side. So we started to get a bit more politically active. And then that led us, of course, through the pandemic, where unfortunately politics and science started to get blurred even more. And then we got into situations where you have governors like ours here in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, locking down the entire state with basically just the rule of an iron fist, no real authority to do what she was doing, just putting out executive orders. And we were watching people, even on the pro-gun side, really believing that these things had the power of law. And we just decided, hey, if we sit here on the sideline, it starts with requiring private businesses to do particular things in their own place of business. And, that's how you start down the path of ultimate tyranny. And if we don't care about this, then how can we legitimately say that, if the federal government decides to try to take AR-15s, that we're not going to give them up? If we haven't demonstrated that with even the simplest of things, choosing to run our businesses the way that we want, not requiring ourselves to, use really a lack of science, actually, just, sort of the prevailing winds of the day to dictate how we're supposed to live our lives, then who are we really? So we started to get a bit more politically active in those types of circumstances. And then that led us, of course, to the election in 2020. And, we had noticed, obviously, that there was a huge influx of new gun owners to the gun community, quote unquote, through the pandemic. And we said, a lot of these people are probably not on the same side as we are politically, and that's fine, so long as they understand that when it comes to the ballot box, you really have to decide where your values are. And since we're an ammunition company, our value first and foremost is the First Amendment and the Second Amendment.
Right.
And so we have to make sure that we explain to people that, these are the consequences of voting for a president like Biden, who, let's be honest, he's just a cardboard cutout, right? They're carrying him around like a fathead wall decoration. So he is the front company. He is the front man for Moms Demand Action, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, all these big anti-gun organizations with a lot of money. So we need to make sure that new gun owners understand that there are consequences to, you just can't vote for these people going forward. You have to take this seriously.
Yeah. And
there's a lack of, as the gun community becomes larger, the culture gets more and more diluted. And, that's a problem with politics on the right end of the spectrum in general. They're always willing to compromise. They're always willing to reach across the aisle. But when they do that, they end up losing, they get further and further away from their core values. And that's how you get to a place where we are now, especially with gun rights.
Yeah.
So we put up a checkbox on our website, and we were asking people, did you vote for Joe Biden, yes or no? And if they said no, they were allowed to proceed into the site and place an order. And if they said yes, the website redirected them to Joe Biden's campaign website, specifically to the page that discussed his plans for gun control. And we said, okay, we can sort of excuse your ignorance. I mean, to be honest, if you didn't know that this was his plan, you were not paying attention and you shouldn't have been voting for anybody. But having said that, you definitely can't plead ignorance now, because you can read this with your own two eyes and see what he plans to do and what all the people around him plan to do. So that kind of led us to where we are now.
So let me jump in. That begs a question. In your view, is there a way? Is it the inevitable? Founding fathers said, the American experiment with 200 years, right? Mm-hmm. And as we look through world history, most empires get a good couple hundred, give or take, right?
Yep.
We're past the point of what the founding fathers said we would even like kind of be at. We've passed that time limit.
Oh, way past. Yeah. Yep.
So is it possible to not only just in the sense of maintain, can a constitutional republic last? And in a bigger picture and in a smaller picture, is there a way, in pointing one into the other, is there a way as our gun community gets larger, is there a way to allow the community to expand without diluting the culture? Is that even a possibility? And if so, how can we, as just citizens that are pro freedom, pro liberty, pro gun, pro Second Amendment, and checking all of those boxes, what can we do as citizens, in your view, and to make that happen? We can expand the community, which in its own essence is one, strength in numbers usually, without diluting it. How can the average citizen go about doing that? Or do you even think that's possible?
Well, it's tough to be sure. I think it's possible, but there have to be a lot of very dedicated people, and they have to really understand the roadmap and what are the important things to this culture that once we lose them will be very difficult to get back. For example, this is something that I've been trying to work on here locally, outdoor gun clubs, right? And those are kind of always been sort of bastions of, when you think of the local gun club, you think of the boomers, right? They play bingo on Saturday. They got fish fry on Friday. It's like, a bunch of old white dudes hanging out, and that's great. Like, that's how they used to be, for sure. But we have to use, so like with competition shooting, a lot of those gun clubs were sort of hesitant to get involved with that community because they were more traditional, hunting and shotgun trap and skeet, that type of stuff. No rapid fire on the range. We all hate that kind of stuff. So then more and more of them have allowed competition shooting to take root, and they see it as a revenue generator, but B, this is the new gun community, right? I mean, I grew up playing 007 and Call of Duty. I wasn't really a big video game guy, but those people are now the adults and the gun owners, and the video game culture has perpetuated that even more. Now you've got the John Wick movies, all these things. So the new community is AR-15s, Gucci Glocks, red dots on pistols, training, Grand Thumb, all these things. It's part of the culture on YouTube, Instagram, the memes, all of this. So we have to continue to move that into these outdoor gun clubs, because once those gun clubs disappear, and every municipality wants to do that, they would love nothing more than to condemn Multi-Lakes gun range in Commerce Township, and take those 250 acres and sell it to Pulte Homes and build a bunch of, shitty taupe McMansions. So we have to support them. We join the club, even if you don't think you're going to use it all that much. Most of them are like $150 a year, and you can do some community service hours, or you can pay like $50 additional to get out of that. So I mean, you like literally have it's no major obligation. It's the cost of Netflix. And they're great places to shoot at. To be honest with you, I hate indoor ranges. I can't stand it. You can't draw from a holster in a lot of cases. You can't practice, the stuff that you really need to practice for practical, realistic defensive shooting. Outdoor clubs, most of them, you show up, you bring your targets. There's nobody there. You've got a gate key access, and you can do whatever the hell you want. You can shoot steel targets with frangible ammo from 6 inches away, and nobody's going to tell you that that's a stupid idea. So we got to support the outdoor gun clubs. Once they disappear, we'll never get them back, and it's very difficult for them to get opened nowadays. There's a big legal battle with one here in Michigan, who's been dealing with that for 3 or 4 years now. So the second thing is we need to support the people who are moving the big rocks and doing the big work. And we also have to find little niches and people in these various niches who are going to be building the next generation. So for us, and for me in particular, that's Firearms Policy Coalition. They just won a big victory in California. It's going to be appealed, obviously. But those guys are on the ball. And those guys are closer to me in age by a long shot than the people who run the NRA. And you know what? I'm still a life member of the NRA. it's I support them reluctantly, I suppose you would say, but obviously they do a lot of heavy lifting. They've done some good work over the years. They've also caused a lot of problems. So we need to make sure that we support the next generation of gun rights organizations. And again, for us, that's FPC, Gun Owners of America, these organizations in particular. And then in terms of the niches, obviously people like yourself, Black Guns Matter, let's face it, one thing that we also need to do is get more indoor shooting ranges in Democrat stronghold areas, AKA big urban cities, Detroit, Philadelphia, Baltimore, all of these places. The more indoor gun ranges we can get opened in those areas, the more we can proliferate the good culture that we want to build. Taking a CPL class and then taking additional training on top of that, understanding that that's not where the road ends. This is a lifelong journey. So we have to support the culture, even in the areas where we really don't want to go. You have to do that, or you're just going to continue to cede more ground. It's going to get worse and worse in those areas. And, politically, it's not getting any better anytime soon. So we have to do what we can to support people who are willing to do what has to be done to make those things happen.
Are we being too inclusive? Are we being, there was a big thing with Recoil magazine, huge shouts to Recoil. I got on the cover of that last few months ago, January. Chris Chang is out this month. Now, obviously, Chris Chang's a gay American dude, right? Buddy of mine. I actually didn't know Chris was gay until like a couple of months ago. I just didn't know.
Right. Who cares?
Right. And that was a testament to him. Yeah. He was just like, hey, that's top shot Chris in my view.
A good ass shooter. Right.
You know what I mean? So and I posted something a few days ago talking about because everybody was up in arms about the flag and all of this other stuff because Recoil asked the question, which cover should we use? And the flag his shirt had, and I get what he was saying. He was saying, hey, listen, I'm a gay American. And that's what, the flag had that. But all of these guys in the comment section were upset. So I have my own position on it. But then you got to have the inverse of your position in order to see if it holds weight. Then the question becomes, okay, hip hop has grown over the last 20 years, by and large, because of folks like Diddy. I don't know if hip hop culture has gotten better or if it's gotten just more accessible. So then the question that I have to ask myself critically is, man, if I don't think that hip hop is in a better space and it's become more multimillionaires from all different backgrounds, people have been able to make a way for themselves and their family, which is a great thing. Excuse me, but it's not the same impact for political, positive political influence, positive social change, right?
Sure.
So I ask myself, are we in the gun community at this point? Is it possible that we're going to be too inclusive, to water it down to your point earlier, where the gun culture starts to shift? And is that possible? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already happening. That was immediately apparent to me in a phone conversation I had, which spurned me to create the wording on the website originally. A woman had called during one of our sales and she was trying to buy ammo. And she said, the website's asking me if I voted for Biden. I don't understand. And so her and I had a conversation and I explained to her, hey, this is what Joe Biden's plan is. What kind of gun do you own? And she said she had a Glock 19. And I said, well, that's what I carry every day. And, if Joe Biden has his way, he's going to try to take that away from you because those can hold more than 15 rounds in a magazine. So, I mean, maybe not take the gun itself away, but he's trying to limit your magazine capacity. What do you think about that? And she said, well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And so her and I debated for almost 45 minutes about, and it was obvious to me that she was not going to change her mind. And she just didn't really understand the implications of what I was saying, that, hey, today it's 10 round magazines. tomorrow it's the gun itself, and then the next time it's revolvers, and then we're down to single shot, Derringers or something. And she just didn't understand where I was trying to get at, and so it was hard for me to applaud her for taking the initiative to buy a gun and want to defend her family. I felt great respect for her for those things. But the problem is that she doesn't understand that having the tools necessary to do that are part of it. And moreover, this is a bigger conversation here. This is about the government trying to say that they can limit human innovation and the advancement of technology. Like, we love technology. Everybody wants the newest iPhone. Everybody wants the TV that's got, the blackest blacks and all these things. And technology has come down in price as a result. But in the gun industry, the AR-15 was invented in the mid 1960s, right? And we still field that in combat. And really, I'll probably get a lot of people, haters in the comments, but it's by far the best, most versatile rifle to own. Like, it just is. So having said that, we really haven't we've made great strides in accessories and all these things, but where's the next American service rifle? Somebody could be inventing that in their garage right now, just like Eugene Stoner was doing, right? Just like Mikhail Kalashnikov did. These guys were home inventors. Like, we celebrate that Apple was started in a garage, but try to start a firearms company in your garage. You better have all your permits and all your licensing. So it creates these barriers to entry that stifle the industry, and so we have to make sure that we're as a culture, we can't lose the fact that. That's kind of what separates America from just about every other country. Like, guns are built into the fabric of this country. We had to build our own firearms once we got our independence because we couldn't rely on Great Britain to sell us guns anymore. Yeah. Why would they? So that's, people find it odd sometimes that some of the oldest gun companies are in places like Connecticut and Massachusetts, these very anti-gun liberal strongholds. Yeah. But that's because those were the original 13 colonies. Right. That's where these companies were founded. They were founded next to waterways where they could have, paddles, whatever they called, powering their forges. Yeah. So, we cannot separate that. Just simply owning a gun isn't enough. We have to make sure that not only do you own a gun, but you understand the implications behind allowing a government to say, we can take this away from you.
So, yeah, and I agree. I think that balance between, hey, welcome into hip hop. Hey, welcome into advancement of technology. Hey, welcome into the gun community. When you go to school, if you want to take this advanced class, you have to have this as a prerequisite. Like, you kind of have to be educated on this component of it first. I somewhat push back against the idea that, and I'm not saying mandated, but I'm saying, like, us as the community, we have to make sure that we're involving those people in doing that educational process. I was talking to today. I spoke to Ed Calderon for about an hour today.
Awesome guy.
Yeah, and
awesome guy.
I'm just listening, and we were having a conversation about spirituality and gun ownership, and him being, a few years in as an American citizen, right, and him being from a place where, like,
shit's real.
It's real. Like, even like these definitions of like police officers, it's like, he's like, yo, I was a cop in Mexico, so like I'm almost like in between cop criminal, like, right. And so
for real.
These concepts of a thing that's real, I think people need to be educated about how real shit can actually get from people in a community that understand a different level of political importance of this right. And I do believe that there's a way to, hip hop failed it. Right. Because that's a subculture, right? We didn't, as people came in, inform them about the process, because the people that, I use Diddy as the example. Diddy was the best thing for me in my era. let's say in the last 20 years, Diddy was the best and worst thing for hip hop at the same exact time. You know what I mean?
Right.
A bunch of millionaires created a bunch of opportunity, but the culture necessarily wasn't being safeguarded, and the torch wasn't being passed to new people coming in with the speed that they were coming in. And I think, like you said, to your point of having those niche markets and people that are willing to do the educational component, I think is a key where we can kind of like hit that 1-2 punch of let's get them in and let's educate them at the same time. That assembly line is very important for me. From your perspective, at being principled in this area about, okay, we're a company, sure, no doubt, obviously everybody right now with the government overreach is buying ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And how has it been? So, I mean, obviously during this time, business is booming for everybody. Like I can't keep enough merch on the shelves. I'm slow as hell. People are getting mad at me, but I'm principled and my brand isn't necessarily selling guns. We're educating people. How has being a principled Second Amendment, First Amendment, we get to make our decisions in our private business, Fourth Amendment company, has that hurt or helped Fenix Ammunition?
It's probably, I mean, it's by far the best decision we've ever made. And sure, there were some scary moments of course, that kind of started with the Boogaloo, right? So, we kind of dove into that meme culture, the Hawaiian shirts, the igloos, all that type of stuff, because it was funny as hell and everybody was on that bandwagon. So but you have to understand where that's going to take you if you're not careful. That there's going to be some fringe folks, let's say, in that community that you have to be very careful with, because you don't want to get too far down the weeds where you start drawing too much negative attention. But inevitably there's going to be negative aspects of every little subculture niche, right? I mean, there's a ton of toxicity in competitive shooting for sure. There's some toxicity in hip hop with gun culture, obviously. So you have to take the good and the bad with that. But along the way, you have to develop a sense of just not really caring what your critics think, because most of your critics are people that were never your customers anyway, right? Mm. So there was this local rag magazine here in Detroit, Metro Times, that tried to call us out for resisting the idea of wearing masks and, calling out Gretchen Whitmer. And it used to really bother me. I'd be sitting on Twitter and reading the comments, and it's like, God, fuck these guys. Like, I feel like I have to say something to every single person. And, what if they report us to the health department? What if they report us to the local police, which they did? So you have to understand that, number one, just you can't care. Like, don't read your own comments. It's like the worst thing ever. But you also have to then understand what you're willing to sacrifice. So I knew that at some point it would come to a head where, look, some police departments are going to try to enforce these COVID restrictions. Police departments are part of our potential customer base and part of our existing customer base. We're going to have to make some decisions. And if we start taking some hard line in the sand stances, we may lose police departments as a customer. And, what it came down to was we inevitably got fined for violating these arbitrary COVID restrictions. And we got fined because a police officer decided to put in his report based on, so he was out there to respond to an anonymous complaint somebody made in a phone call. So I have a police officer in my place of business harassing me because he got an anonymous phone call that we don't wear masks. And while he was there, I handed a customer his order. We were about 4.5 feet away. The customer was wearing a mask. He was in there for all of 10 seconds. The officer put that in his report, sent his report to the health department, which, he didn't have to do any of that. As a result, we got fined. So I said, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm not going to support organizations who do not have my best interest in mind. Yeah, that cop's got to worry about his job and his pension and his dental plan, all those things, but I got to worry about mine as well.
Right.
So if it comes down to me or him, it's going to be me every time. That's just the way this is going to work.
Right.
So we decided we weren't going to work with law enforcement for a period of time. That's still the case. And, you know, we have enough customers in our other niches that it's not a problem. We have no problem selling to individual officers who are actually doing the training that they should be doing. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. But, you know, we're just not going to deal with government entities right now because, you know, they don't know what they're doing. And this is bullshit. And we're just not going to do it. So it was a risk, but, you know, it worked out. We've been just fine. It hasn't been an issue at all. You know, we've had a ton of emails from people in law enforcement that say, hey, good for you guys. I'm glad to see you're doing this. You know, we'll find ammo, but I'm glad that, you know, you feel you can stand up for something. And you know, I'm not writing these tickets myself personally, but, you know, my department is, and I wish they weren't. So.
And this brings up an amazing point too, because you'll hear guys going back to the Chris Chang thing with like the flags and all of that. You know, I think that the profession, when it's focused on actually catching bad guys, like legit bad guys, right? I think that portion of the profession is noble.
100%. 100%.
That, you know, if I'm gonna go chase a guy that I think's a rapist, and I'm gonna put, I saw a video today. It was officer cam footage. And I mean, literally, there's like a pickup truck, and the dude's like stuck in it, and the thing's like about to be engulfed in flames. And this officer, with no hesitation, radios, hey, boom, runs over, breaks the glass, has the glass breaker, opens the door. His partner's trying to put the fire out, and they snatch the guy out. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. This is the job. This is what this guy signed up for. But then when you have, you know, guys that are like, hey, man, get out of here because you don't have a mask on. Two things come to mind. One, everybody watching this knows I haven't put a mask on like this whole time. I've been doing the same thing I was doing the whole fucking time, right? One, we know we're going to be right. So at the end of this, we're right. So the two things that come to mind is, one, are you going to rescind those so-called fines and all of these different things that you sent me when the data becomes clear? Because if I'm wrong, I'll say, damn, I thought I was focused on freedom, and maybe this was bigger than I thought, and I'm big enough to go, no, okay, I thought one thing and it was a different thing.
Right.
But when it's the other side, when it becomes agents of the state, are you guys going to acknowledge that you were wrong and then go, hey, I can't do that? And the other thing is, you know, these guys are up in arms about flags, but I see the thin blue line flag everywhere, but nobody's like, that's not the stars and stripes. These are the people that, if we are not very careful, and if we hold ourselves to a standard and we don't hold them to a standard, these are the same people that will come into your business and write you this pencil neck fine at the minimum. Right. At worst, if we continue to allow people into the community and their voting choices are in alignment with their own violation of their own rights, now that same type of officer attempts to come into Fenix Ammo or attempts to run into the Maj 2 Ray tour bus because we think that you have ARs in Chicago and we know that you're not licensed to carry. You know what I mean? So those two things come to mind. Do you think that law enforcement officers, do you think, and this is a hell of a presumption, but just your perspective, do you think that most officers genuinely would not attempt to enforce that? And if so, why don't more of those guys speak up? Or do you think the opposite, that absolutely the vast majority of those guys, as long as their pension or their dental plan is intact, they would absolutely try to, you know, enforce unconstitutional mandates on private citizens and private businesses?
Boy, it's hard to say. You know, I think it's going to vary quite a lot from department to department and from state to state. I mean, a number of, you know, sheriff's offices in particular in various states, you know, a lot of the ones you can probably think of, Montana, Idaho, places like this, who have said, you know what, we will absolutely have nothing to do with writing COVID fines. And I mean, you've seen even some of them brave enough to say, you know, we don't have any interest in enforcing firearms bans of any kind. Like I'm not going in there. So I think you'd have like, so, you know, let's say presumptive example, there's a total ban on, you know, quote unquote, everyone's going to bitch that I say this, but assault weapons, right? AR-15s, anything, mag-fed semi-autos, okay?
Yeah.
And they start going, you know, and they say, look, you guys have 60 days to turn these in, and we know who has them because we're requiring all the FFLs to send their 4473s to a central database. Like, we're passing a registry, you're fucked. Like, we know where they all are. The ones that we know about, of course, you know, not the 80%ers and stuff, but we're coming to get them. And we're coming in 30 days. Okay. I think that would be the craziest 30 days of, you know, the world has ever seen. You would have some police departments saying, absolutely not. And what's more, we will stand guard in our towns, and we will not let the ATF or the federal government in here to enforce it either. I think you'd see that reaction from a number of police departments.
Yeah. In
the big cities and the liberal strongholds, I think you'd see much the opposite. It probably would be something like 80-20. You'd have 20% of officers saying, fuck that, we're out, we're done, we're not going to do it. But I think you'd have a pretty significant percentage saying, you know, yep, we're going to see this through for a bit. Now, you know, there's a couple of different websites online that have some very good calculations of, like, you know, the total number of law enforcement in the entire country. And, you know, so let's say, I want to say the number was something like 900, there's 900,000 members of law enforcement in the United States. I could be totally off at that figure, but, you know, so of that 900,000, though, you've got all these administrative people, HR, like the people that don't do anything. So how many actual door kickers do you have out of those 900,000? You know, let's say it's 200. So you've got like 200,000 door kickers versus, you know, 150 million gun owners or 100 million gun owners that we know about. It's like, okay, you know, the first couple of weeks are going to not look so great for them. And then I think you see, if you've got 80% of officers that said, yeah, we'll do this, I think that's going to be down to like 10% within, you know, 14 days or something. So obviously, like, the last thing that this country would ever want is for something like that to actually happen. I mean, that's full out like balkanization, you know, that looks like Bosnia, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So that's the trick is, you know, we don't want to even come close to that. So how do we have the right conversations with law enforcement? Yeah. You know, and that kind of starts with your buddies. You know, I train at a jiu-jitsu gym. There's a lot of law enforcement there, federal, state, local, state police, etc. And, you know, I mean, there's ATF there, and, you know, he's a good guy. I like him. I like Joe very much, but, you know, I screw with him all the time. Hey, Joe, you know, you come into my door to get on my braces yet? Or, you know, how things going? And right. So you got to kind of feel these guys out. And I know plenty of them that have told me in private conversations, yeah, dude, I would quit in a heartbeat. I would want no part of that. And what's more, I would actively try to circumvent any other officers that were doing so. Yeah. So you just kind of hope that they're being real with you, and, you know, that they're not keeping tabs on you, more or less. But, you know, I think there's a right way to have those conversations. And I think we'll have to allow law enforcement in some of the more rural and Republican, you know, more red states take the lead on that, and hope that others will at least be listening. You know, they may not verbalize it, but they may be listening. It's hard to say.
So switching gears a bit, we've identified, for everybody that's in the live right now, please hit the like, hit the thumbs up, hit all of that other good stuff. If you want to ask questions, do the super chat thing, support. Make sure you subscribe and all that other good stuff. Make sure you are following Fenix Ammo on Twitter. Instagram and Facebook still down, right?
Yeah, there are a couple of like imposter pages that we try to get removed, and they'll come back, but yeah, as of now, our only social media is Twitter, right?
All right, make sure y'all following Fenix Ammo, FenixAmmo. Real quick, So we've identified, Justin's position, Phoenix Ammo's position in regards to liberty, in regards to the Constitution, in regards to the Bill of Rights as it pertains to the Second Amendment. Okay, I'll just say it. I was approached by a company, and obviously everybody knows that, like, I'm like super like, yeah, Phoenix Ammo, Phoenix Ammo, Phoenix Ammo. I was approached by a company. Hey, do you need ammo? And they were a FUD company. Let's just be perfectly honest. They were a FUD company. And and I was talking to one of my friends, and I'm telling him, like, nah, bro, they absolutely know that Black Guns Matter has an ammo sponsor. And I don't really know their intent there. Obviously, other than, hey, if we get this guy and we give him ammo, we'll start, getting into that market. The reason why, to everybody watching, the reason why I bang with, Phoenix, it's not a money thing. I don't, that part doesn't move me as much. Like, there's a scene in I Am Legend where Will Smith's character is chasing his dog. His dog's ran into this bank. And the bank is like, if you haven't seen I Am Legend, it's like zombies. Will Smith's
the best movie.
Right. He's supposed to, like, at this time, he's like the last dude on earth. It's him and his dog. And his dog is all he's got. His family's dead. And while he's looking for his dog, he's in a bank. And there's, I don't know, untold amounts of money on the ground. Like, there's just all of the money. None of that money's important at that moment. None of it.
Right.
And I understand, money makes the wheels go around and so forth and so on. But at a certain point, as a company, as an organization, you have to look beyond the money, and it has to be some sort of principle. This company reaches out and attempts to give me, I told them a number. I said, well, hey, why don't you donate to our work? Knowing that they would not. Knowing. And I made this lesson point to my friend, and I'm like, man, you got to be surprised at some people that will be in the gun industry that will sell their own business long-term out because they want a short-term gain. And because of that, they won't even invest in areas. They'll try it, but then when you hold them to task, either principally or say, okay, you got to pay out the wazoo, they'll fall back. Now, I'm saying this because, and it's not even out the wazoo, it's a standard. This company, I told them, okay, donate $100,000, do $50,000 in cash to the work, and do 50,000 rounds of ammo. Now, I want to be clear to everyone. I don't bug. Justin calls me like, yo, bro, you good? You need, whatever, or we'll talk about other things. That's the type of energy that you want with the companies and the organizations that you're looking for. So in explaining that, without going too deep into the company itself, obviously, when I told them the number, they waited a while and they were like, we think that's a little bit too expensive. Mind you, the company does $100 million easy. That's like a conservative.
That's a month. Yeah.
Right. Right.
2 months.
Justin knows who the company is. Now, I'll say this to say, how do we fight against those companies that are pretty much maybe even artificially creating this ammo shortage? How do we, as individual consumers and citizens, is it possible, again, we all about the balance, is it a way to hold those companies to task while not stifling our own Second Amendment industry? Can we maintain that balance that we would want to those influx of new people into the gun community as consumers? Can we hold companies to that same standard? And what do you think is a way? How have you been able to walk that balance so well?
Yeah, one of the good things about this industry is there's a lot of choice. So, for example, if you're looking for an AR-15, okay, everybody makes them nowadays. So if you're willing to wait a little bit, right now, obviously, you kind of buy what you can buy. But, in the down markets, especially, when you have a lot of choice and there's tight competition in the AR market in particular, if you're willing to spend a little bit more and buy something local, you should do that. Here in Michigan, we've got a great company called BG Defense in Grand Rapids. I buy a ton of their rifles. I recommend they're great rifles. They make a really great in-house trigger set. A lot of good things about them. So if I'm trying to steer somebody for like a mid-range rifle, $15 to $2,000, let's say, there's a ton of companies fighting in that market. Some of them are very big. Some of them are local. So I try to steer things locally because the fact of the matter is the big companies in the United States in particular are making a lot of their money on law enforcement sales, government sales, international government sales, right? So they also benefit from the local consumer market, which is unique to our country. But generally speaking, that's not where the big money is in their eyes. So it's not that I'm suggesting that we punish them, but I own a ton of Glocks. Okay, I mean, Glock's a big company. They're not even a U.S. company, so call me a traitor. That's fine. But I like Glocks, so that's the end of the deal. Like, sorry, I'm just not going to buy a Springfield,
right?
For a lot of reasons, but I wouldn't even get into that. So, but when you have the ability to make a local choice, make a local choice. Try to build some of these smaller companies that have made, they can turn much faster than these big old wooden ships that have been around forever. So, they're the ones who are going to jump on things like, the brace market, innovating accessories and things that the bigger companies enjoy, niche markets like competitive shooting, etc. So, you can be smarter with your money, and you can help support smaller companies who then can become medium-sized companies, and they can force the big guys to get smarter and faster and more in tune with today's gun culture, because that's what these big guys want to do. They're all kicking themselves for having ignored these, particularly the urban market, the hip hop market. They were avoiding that like the plague because they didn't. The first time you heard the word Glock for a lot of people was in a rap song, and usually not in a productive way. Let's be real. So, they've tried to distance themselves from that for so long, instead of saying like, hey, look, this is an inevitable, this is an inevitable toxic aspect of this that we'll have to deal with. But this is a huge, broad market for us. And, we can make a ton of ground. I've been saying for a couple of years now that the gun community, the big gun companies and, the NRA should have been putting together a slush fund of money to help indoor ranges get opened in urban centers. Find people who have been living in that community for a long time, people who have been teaching concealed pistol classes and have been, helping turn some of these neighborhoods around through building the culture of self-reliance and self-defense and neighborhood watch and these things. A lot of them just lack the money. And so if you said, hey, look, guys, we know that you're good people in this particular area. You have great connections with the community. You're very well respected. Like, let's help you. Like, if this is just a money thing, let's figure out how to do this, zero interest or something. And, this is going to be productive, not just for this city, but it's productive for the gun community. And let's be honest, it's productive from a political standpoint, because it might not help in the very next election, but you start building a culture of self-reliance and less reliance on government, less reliance on even local police, and more reliance on the community and neighborhood watch, protecting yourself and your family, protecting your neighbors, and that's all done with firearms. That's how you start to shift the political landscape, where you have people thinking, well, I'm independent in all these ways. Why do I want the government telling me, what size mailbox I have to use, right, and, that I have to send my kids to these public schools where they don't have any fucking books and the roof is falling in and the teachers don't give a shit about them. They're still on strike because they want all these kids to get vaccinated.
Mm.
with an experimental vaccine that's not been tested on kids. So why are, it's that way because we've left it alone as a community for so long. And so, the problem with that is, of course, you're going to get hit back from some people who will say, well, you're making this all about race and it's not about that. And it's like, you're right. It's not about that. It's about the values of, it has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with any, even in the case of like Chris, like you said, you didn't even know the guy was gay. Why? Because it didn't matter. He believed in the same values that you believed in: self-reliance, being able to protect yourself. So we have to, we can't be afraid to have these fringe people around the edges trying to nibble away and trying to divide us and pit this person against that person. Like, we're just going to have to put on our waders and wade through the shit for a little while, because there's a huge pot of gold at the end of that, and we have to be committed to it.
Are these bigger companies artificially creating this shortage? Now, for me, I can go to next year and not buy a round. I'm fine. First of all, my dry practice game has been fucking great, because it's like, whatever, bro. Right?
Dry fire practice is for the pores, Maj.
Right. It's absolutely. I'm one of the pores. I'm doing it all day. I got cert pistol, empty mags, whatever I got to do. Are they artificially, because they have a vested interest? And don't get me wrong, as an ammo company, guys will sign up for Fenix Ammos, and you guys have, I'm signed up for a lot of those companies' thing. And 10 minutes, 2 seconds after, like, there's no way that y'all sold out in, that's outdated. They don't do it right. You guys are like, hey, y'all, in a little bit, ammo will be on sale at this particular time. Be ready, because it will sell out, no doubt. So everybody's business is booming, but are these companies doing this specifically for financial gain? And real quick, my man KD from the Real NOC says, with the super chat, $10 says, all gun businesses aren't in the business of freedom. It's up to real men to do work. Companies want millions from us, but want to invest pennies.
100%.
Doug says, $10 super chat says, keep the good work up to both of you. Much love from Seattle. Seattle's beautiful this time of year, by the way.
Thank
my
you.
God. Are these companies doing things, and if so, what are they, to maintain an artificial ammo shortage? The only example that I can give is like the De Beers group with diamonds, like hoarding a bunch of the diamonds, putting them in like mountains and locking them up and only allowing a certain amount out. Is that something that's similar that's happening, or is it just me and my conspiracy theory thought process?
It's hard to say. Here's the real problem. What we do at Fenix is not terribly difficult. We're assembling component parts that we're purchasing from other suppliers. Okay, it's complicated. I mean, there's aspects of it that are, but we're not manufacturing things from raw materials. So the problem is that market is very, very consolidated, and it's extremely expensive to get into. It's very permit and regulation heavy. So primer manufacturing, right? Primers use a very sensitive explosive material. It's got to be mixed on site. That requires real chemistry. You got to be adjusting things based on, the barometric pressure, the humidity in the room. So it's very complicated. And also you got to make, 1 billion of these things a month at a minimum. So anytime you're making 1 billion of anything a month, that's extremely difficult. It requires a lot of automation. It's very expensive. So it's, when we have these shortages, you can't just start up a primer company at the drop of a hat, right? Yeah. So there is an independent primer company opening up in Texas, and it's taken them like 2 years to do this. Okay. So that's one problem. There's a lot of consolidation in the primer market, and also the smokeless powder market. That's another shortage that we're having a problem dealing with right now. You've got DuPont, you've got General Dynamics, and then you've got some overseas companies. But, again, that's not something that your average person can just start easily. It requires tens of millions of dollars. So Those two things, you have to have them to make ammunition. So we are starting to see more people getting into the primer business, and companies like, I know Aguila is considering selling primers outside of their own company. Right now, they just make primers for themselves, but they're thinking about getting into that market to sell to people like myself. So you're starting to see that market open up a little bit more, and that will help bring the cost down over time. But, the other issue is making these things. Usually these companies are located in urban areas. And so when you have shortages, demand spikes, it's very difficult for them to go out and double their labor force, for example, when they're in a small town in North Dakota or something where you just don't have skilled labor available. And yes, they'd love to put in a new primer line to keep up with demand, but that equipment is very specialized and very expensive. It takes months and months, if not years, to build. We bought a machine that has taken us almost 10 months to get, and it's not even that. It is a complicated machine to be sure, but nothing like what it would require to manufacture primers. So the problem is this industry is also very cyclical, and so if these companies run up a huge amount of debt during a boom market like it is now, and then all of a sudden the political winds shift a bit like they did in 2016, that's part of the reason that Remington had bankruptcy issues, was because they made huge investments because everybody knew that Hillary was going to win, and then she didn't. And so now they're holding the note on a huge number, and the demand drops through the floor, and all of a sudden your cash flow dries up and you're fucked. So that is one of the other problems, is that you have to have cash when you need the cash, and you have to be very careful about how long-term you plan in an industry that's as cyclical and politically driven as ours. And then, of course, you have instances where the federal government sees that there's going to be a shortage because the retail demand is going up so high. So what do? They place big orders. So we always see these big orders from like DHS and, various three-letter agencies that are happening during these boom markets, and people think it's a conspiracy. It might be, I like to dabble in that. So I'll say maybe it is a conspiracy. They're buying up all the ammo so that we don't have it. Sure, that's possible. It's also possible that they say, hey, look, the retail demand in this nation is enormous. Again, we are totally unique from every other country in the world. So if DHS and CBP needs ammo, CBP needs ammo like nobody's business these days, it seems. There's, cartel wars on our border. So they need it, and they know they don't maybe have a problem with us needing it too, but they've got a lot more money to spend. So the big companies it's easier for them to take one order for $50 million than it is for them to take, 10 million orders for $500 or $50, right? So there's some business decisions that get made that we as the retail market may not like, but some of these big companies, that's an easy decision for their board. It's a better decision for their shareholders. And, as KD was saying, not all these gun companies are really about the Second Amendment. That's the sad truth of the matter. Most of them are thinking about their profit margin and their return to the shareholders. Those things are important as well, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that this is why we are in this. That's why this industry exists. And that's why the Second Amendment exists in this country, is also because of the industry, right? One hand washes the other. The consumer market benefits from the industry benefits from the consumer market. And we can't get too far away from each other. We have to reel these big companies back in and make them understand that they need us. And at the same time, we can also help support small and medium-sized companies who don't, they're a little bit more flexible than some of these companies that have, HR departments and a board of directors, and they don't have, even the CEOs do not have the ability to make unilateral decisions and, go off one day on Twitter, cancel some guy's order because he told you he voted for Joe Biden, and then post it up on Twitter and call the guy a douchebag. Like, look, Winchester's never going to be able to do that, guys. I wish, but it's just never going to happen. Right. So, let's try to, that's sort of my own little plug, I suppose. Try to support the people who are willing to embrace an undeniable aspect of the gun culture, which is, look, the motto is come and take it. Like, that's a direct challenge. Okay. Right. We don't want to get away from that. We can't ostracize, that part of the industry. We need to embrace it, and we need to explain that to the people who bought a gun and put it under their nightstand and they don't even have the right kind of ammo. Like, look, I make fun of FUDs and boomers and Serpa holsters and all this stuff as much as the next guy. But we also, when we can, we have to try to educate those folks and make sure that we don't lose the values. If we ignore those people entirely, the problem is they'll make really bad decisions and they'll fuck the whole industry. So we have to, I'm not saying reach across the aisle, but we have to make sure that we keep reconstituting our own culture. You got to, like, when you're making gravy, you got to boil that shit down. You can't let that get too diluted.
I think that where I'm really good at, because I don't have a financial stake in the gun industry. I mean, like, if this all goes left, I could set up shop and I could trap anywhere. Like, I'm good, right? The beauty of that for me is I am that person that can at least try to talk to those people across the aisle. This is a new way that I've and it's kind of a secret, but I got a bunch of them. A new way that I've approached anti-gun people is saying in conversation with them in real life, like, oh man, you're actually not anti-gun. And they usually kind of are a bit taken aback. Now, I know that they're anti-gun.
Right.
But I'm doing a Jedi mind trick thing on people all of the time, right? So I'll say, this is my, me explaining my approach of dealing with people on the other side of the aisle, because the position that I have, I'm the outlier of the person that can go over there because I'm from there. Every city that I'm in usually is 70 to 90% Democrat, right?
Yep.
So we have to have those people there too. And one of the approaches that I've been using is when I'll have a conversation in real life, I'll go, man, you're actually not anti-gun. I thought you were like really, really staunch anti-gun. And they'll go, no. I'm just not, guns is bad. And I'm like, nah, man, people that are usually anti-gun, are very stubborn. And this conversation, you've been very objective with me. And I appreciate that. And, that lets me know that you're not anti-gun. And they usually double down again and they'll say, well, no, I'm absolutely anti-gun. And I'll say, you know how I know that you're not anti-gun? And they'll obviously go, why do you think that, or how? And I'll say, man, we're here having a great conversation. We both want the best for our families, and we're here with our loved ones or friends. And if they were all here, and if some really, really bad guy came up here with a gun, and if there was a gun on the ground, I pick it up. That you would pick that gun up to help protect me and not let him kill me.
Yep.
And not let him kill us as we stood here. The only way that they can prove that they're anti-gun, they'd almost have to say, they'd almost have to say,
I don't care about you.
Yeah, I'd let him kill the shit out of you. Like, you're dead as shit. And nobody wants to say that. And so, like, to your point of supporting the organizations or people, I'm able to play around with that. I'm able to kind of go over there and have that conversation. But we have to support the people, organizations, and things that are doing things like that. Because otherwise, what I've noticed is actual, anti-gun people will paint us and everybody on our freedom side as whatever the splinter is. You're a white dude. They're like, those white dudes they don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
If we aren't doing that, we kind of leave it open in that regard. And I really appreciate, especially in this live, where you're being very, I'm not doing the Jedi mind thing to you right now, right? Where
you always are.
Like, explaining, like, no, some of these companies are FUDs, but they have their place. And look, man, they've, like you said, these guys in these gun companies have been around, and there's a reason why they're in Massachusetts. There's a reason why they're in Connecticut. because they've been around for that long. It ain't a game you just gonna like. I'm never doing a fucking reload. I'm never building a fucking AR. Sorry, guys. I'm never building an AR. I'm never doing a reload. I'm just not doing it. I'm just not gonna do it. What I am gonna do is follow and get behind and support those companies that are small to medium companies. Okay, I got a couple Daniel defenses too. I know Marty Daniel. However, I'm still going to get, run that gamut. When you're in Foot Locker, there's sneakers for $40.
Yeah.
There's sneakers for $100. There's sneakers for $400. So I think if we do that, I think we'll be good. Tell the people what you think. First, tell people where they can obviously sign up for the mailing list, how they can get ammo, how quick that shit is going off the shelves, so they need to be on point. And just like what you generally want people to take away from your ethos and things of that nature, so we can, before we wrap it up.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, that's sort of my answer, my reply to what you were saying. We have to be willing to have, conversations. I go to a ton of Moms Demand Action meetings. I know that I'm going to not be well received. I've had the cops called on me, but every so often I'll have a decent conversation, and very similar to the approach that you take. What I say is, look, if it came down to somebody or your daughter, if all you had in your hand was a knife, would you stab them? Oh, of course. I would do what I had to do. Okay. What if you had a rock in your hand? Would you beat the guy to death with a rock? Okay, I wouldn't like that, but sure. And I say, okay, what if you had a gun? Well, yeah, of course. So you're not anti-gun, and so like, do you think that it's more morally acceptable to bludgeon somebody to death with a rock or stab them to death? Like, do you know what that looks like? Like, that's intimate. Like, stabbing somebody is an intimate affair. Okay. You can shoot some dude from across the room and you're not looking him in the eye while he bleeds to death on top of you. So, it's not, you're not anti-gun. You just think that I'm an unreasonable person. Now you see that you and I have something in common. We both put our families and our lives first and foremost. So now maybe that's a seed you plant in their head where he's sitting lying awake at night thinking, fuck, he got me. I don't know what I would do there. So, we have to be willing to have those conversations, but we also have to be willing to walk away. And at the end of the conversation, if they just don't fucking get it, then that's not when you say, well, I can see where you're coming from. It's like, no, dude, I can't see where you're coming from. Like, I'm sorry, but if it's, me or my wife versus some home invader, like, the guy's fucking dead. There's just no two ways about it. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So you have to be willing to walk away. And I guess that's sort of my overall ethos is you have to be willing to walk away from a customer, from a sale, from, sometimes even a friend or a family member where you just say, look, we're going to disagree on this position. And if you decide that we can't be friends, then I have to be willing to say, hey, that's a decision that you made. It's not a decision I made, but I have to be okay with it. Right. I can't try to concede ground to you just for the sake of saving face with a friend. If he doesn't want to talk to you, then, I mean, what kind of a friend is he really? That's, who would put that over a friendship?
Right.
So as far as where people can find us, obviously phoenixammo.com is our website. And right now, with shortages and production delays and, shipping delays, all kinds of things, we're still dealing with a lot of that stuff from COVID. Things sell out very quickly, so you can sign up for in-stock notifications on specific products. That's the best way to do it. So if you need a 147 grain 9mm because you're a USPSA shooter, make sure you sign up for the in-stock notification on that specific product. And then you can also sign up for our general mailing list. Usually we send out an email the day before we're going to do a release. Sometimes we don't, though, because we also want to try to be fair. There are some people who work second shift, third shift. They have an odd schedule, something like that, and they can't always be there at 10 a.m. or 8 p.m., one of those two. So sometimes we do them randomly to kind of try to get some of those people a fair shot as well. And then obviously you can follow us on Twitter at Fenix Ammunition. that's pretty much it. Just try to support local shooting clubs, support competitive shooting in particular, big market for us. Companies like FPC, Black Guns Matter, and we know that not everybody has a ton of money to spend, so spend that money wisely and support the people who are really trying to do things to proliferate the culture and keep the values of the culture. That's the most important part. We want to grow the community, but we cannot allow it to get diluted to the point where we lose sight of what we really are about.
100%. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you.
No problem. Anytime.
We're going to be on the road. I'm going to be bugging you about ammo pretty shortly here.
Let us know, man. Always here for you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to save this. Everybody, thank y'all. Make sure y'all share this to all of your social media platforms. Make sure you're following them. Follow on social media Gun Policy. That's F Firearms Policy Coalition, who just had a huge win over in the state of Cali. No, contrary to some people's opinions right now, gun activism and advocacy is not dead. That was a 30-something year, ban. And I think that's over on like the 4th of July over there in Cali, which is like super like stars aligning type thing. So thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate you all. Y'all be safe. Be solutionary.